Hi there, and thanks for joining us on this segment of Take One for Ag. With me today is Dr. Becky Mott, who has a shared appointment between the College of Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources and the College of Human and Environmental Sciences here at the University of Missouri. Welcome, Becky, to this segment of Take One for Ag.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, so you've done some interesting research here a couple of years ago that really, we're gonna start off maybe at a little bit different angle, but we're gonna get into the meat and potatoes of this. You did some research on students and their 4-H projects, especially around live animals, both 4-H and FFA projects, and what those mean to the community. Can you give us a little bit of background about that research?
Sure. I was really interested in discovering youth perspective around livestock projects. And I was particularly interested in those young people who had been involved in livestock production through their entire childhood. So from the time that they could walk up until they were the age of 17 or 18, seniors in high school, which was the age that they were when I interviewed them. And so that research consisted of 3 different rounds of interviews done at home, on the farm, and at livestock shows, as well as a lot of observations, and a photo elicitation activity where I asked them to bring forward some of their earliest livestock memories to discuss that. And so those activities really help to just illuminate the perspective that those young people had around the meaning of livestock production throughout their childhood.
So what were some of what were the 30,000-foot takeaway messages from that research?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, and this is not a surprise to most people, I don't believe, is that children who have been involved in livestock production throughout their entire lives feel a great deal of caring connection throughout those projects. And that's really multi-layered. They feel it from their families because it is such a family-centric project. You know, it's not something that a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old can do completely on their own. It's a family affair. And for many of them, you know, they're the 3rd, 4th, 5th generation doing this kind of work as well. So the family layer was one layer. We also found that young people felt very, very connected to their local communities because these livestock projects had helped launch them into, you know, building relationships with the people around them, whether that was people at the feed store, people in the extension office, people that they met at fairs or shows. And then also they were beginning to feel very connected to the ag community. So not just producers around them, but also people in industry, as well as a lot of other young people who were involved in ag around the state and around the nation. In fact, many times those young people throughout the interviews would call the people in ag their ag family. And that was, I mean, that just shows the extent of connection that they felt to the ag community.
Well, Becky, you know, we're sitting here on June 1, 2020, and we're coming up on what would typically be, you know, ramping up to fair season here, starting end of June, 1st of July, and then culminating, at least in our state, with the Missouri State Fair there in August. And of course, we've got a global pandemic, COVID-19. It's had a big impact. State of Missouri starting to reopen a little bit. Let's put this in perspective. I mean, a lot of questions being asked around, you know, what's going to happen at fairs and stuff. What does your research, how can we relate that to what could happen if we reopen fairs? But even on the other side, what happens if we don't open fairs? What can the students and families take away from that?
Yeah, well, and I think it's important to acknowledge that we're going to have some of all of those things probably around the state. You know, we've already seen a lot of county fairs canceled. We've seen some other county fairs change significantly, where maybe it's an instance where the animals come, the kids show, and they immediately go home. Whereas maybe they're used to having a fair where they were on the grounds for 4 or 5 days, which is a great opportunity for them to make friendships and build connections and things like that. So, and then I think we'll have some other fairs that probably function a little bit more normally. Right now, our youth and their families are very much on pins and needles because they're not quite sure what direction we might be going. So, our 4-H and FFA members around the state are still at home, holding their breath, working with their livestock for sure. And even the ones who have had fairs canceled already, that livestock doesn't go away. They're still home investing the time, the effort, and they're disappointed. They're terribly disappointed because there is a huge amount of, time and resources and energy, not just by that young person, but by that young person's support system put into those projects, whether that's their family or their teachers or their community, whoever.
So Becky, you said something key there is that just because the fairs end doesn't mean that their experience with livestock ends. What can those, again, kids and families? This is still a great learning experience for them working with their livestock.
So I would almost argue that this may be a year where I'm not going to say it will be easy, but a young person might be able to learn more this year in some ways than they ever have before. For any of us who have been in the livestock industry, we know that learning doesn't always come in a fun or an easy way. So, even if that young person is not able to show this year, there are lots and lots of other things involved with livestock production. It is way, way, way more than showing livestock. And so, this is a great opportunity for a parent or a 4-H leader or an ag teacher to sit down with a young person and have a conversation and first of all, acknowledge that disappointment, right? Like, this is hard. I understand this is hard for you. But then have that conversation about, hey, so what are some other things in this livestock industry that you're really interested in that you'd like to take the opportunity to learn some more about this summer? Maybe you've got a young person who is really mechanically inclined. What a great opportunity to hook up with a family member and think about, gosh, are there some better handling facilities that we could be creating here on the farm? Maybe you've got somebody who's into communications or social media kind of work. Maybe it's time to create a website and see if you can help them sell some of that meat that they're going to have from their animal locally. Maybe it's time to turn the reins over a little bit and let an older youth think about, can they select the AI sires for your herd this spring? Can that be a duty that they can maybe work with a mentor on? There are lots and lots of things that they can be doing. And I also don't want to forget to mention, Joe, that, this is a really good summer to build some mentorship in. And I hope that all of us in the ag community will really take it upon ourselves to think about who do we have in our lives that we could step up and be a mentor for this summer. And we know that those mentoring relationships work the best when they're built around a shared interest, when you're working together toward a goal or on a skill. And then that mentoring just happens naturally. Mentorship is much more than just being nice to someone. It's so important to have that shared goal and work together.
Well, Becky, you said it right up front. I mean, this is about community. This is about an experience. Obviously, these students out there are going to be getting a unique experience this summer, but it also gives them a chance to connect in community in a much different way under much different circumstances that, like you said, it's probably going to draw them closer throughout the process. So, if you had to sum up kind of, again, your research there from 2018 and what it means for 2020, how might you do that? The big takeaway message.
Yeah, well, I mentioned on the front end that we for sure talked about the caring connections. That came out of the research. But the other piece that came out that I didn't mention up front was that livestock production is also full of hard times, of challenges, of disappointments, and of learning how to deal with pain and grief. And this is for sure what's going on in these kids' lives this year. For most of them, especially the older ones, this is not the first time that they've dealt with disappointments and pain in their livestock projects. It's a little bit different way this time, but most of them, by the time they're 17 or 18 years old, they've faced some losses, some unexpected deaths, or some economic hardships that happened along the way. These kids, they're resilient. And they say things like, it was really, really disappointing, but hopefully next year will be better. And I'm going to keep pushing forward. And I know that they're going to do the very same thing this year and come out stronger, as long as they've got the support of the ag family, of their own families, and of their local communities.
Well, great, Becky. So we appreciate you joining us on Take One for Ag today. So on here. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And to our viewers, look for future segments of Take One for Ag on any of our social media platforms. Thank you.